So now that the dust on NAMM has settled and all of the new releases have come to light, I figured it'd be a good time to put together a top 10. I didn't personally go to NAMM this year, but I heard a few people saying it was underwhelming, unexciting, and pretty boring in general, and I completely disagree. In fact, I found it pretty difficult to pick a top 10. I'm sure I missed something off of my list, but this is what I've whittled it down to. To keep things fair, I'll pick one product from each brand rather than populating the list with the same brands. With that, the number 10 spot goes to the Jackson LM87 Lima model. This year was a great year for offset guitars, as we're going to see when we get further down the list. Jackson also released the HT6, HT7 and JS22 models of the Surfcaster. We got an awful lot of offsets from Jackson this year, but the Lima model takes it, just with the classic sort of Jaguar stylings, like the chrome plate for instance. This is also a pretty well priced model. I was expecting to see this one at about 1500 or so, but it's currently sitting at €999. Number 9 on the list is the Mua GS1000. I have been saying for years that Mua really need to start putting the amp profiling tech front and center. It's been long overdue for them to fully commit to this and actually put it into a hardware unit, but the GS1000 is their first step towards that. Now, Mua's capturing tech goes way back. I remember talking about it in my video of the Mua Preamp X2, which is probably 3 or 4 years ago now. That was long before we had stuff like the Headrush units, the Quad Cortex, and pretty much everyone else was doing their amp capturing tech. In fact, when Mua launched this, I think their only real competitor was going to be the Kemper Profiler. So yeah, it took them quite a while to translate this tech from an iPad app over to a dedicated hardware unit, but I am so stoked to see this happen, so it sits comfortably at number 9. Also, the Mua GS1000 benefits from acting as a full modeler unit and comes in cheaper than something like the Nano Cortex. At number 8, I'm putting the EVH Wolfgang Special in Oxblood. I owned one of the older made in Japan Wolfgang Specials. I had the Stealth Hardtail in black, and it's the only guitar I ever regret selling. I'm very happy to see this model come back, and in such a spectacular finish too. The price is also pretty good at £1,089 here in the UK. The spoke wheel truss rod adjustment is absolutely clutch, and I'd love to see this on every model of guitar. I'm so done with headstock truss adjust now. For an honourable mention before we get back to the list, I want to put the Rev Revision cabinets. These aren't strictly guitar gear, so to speak, but they're so cool that I had to add them into this list. This is a full screen built into a dummy cabinet, so rather than having to use things like custom grill cloths or scrims when you're on stage, you can actually display full videos on these cabinets. From what I saw of these cabinets on the NAMM footage, they look absolutely stunning to boot, and the only downside is they're going to cost 2,500 Canadian dollars each, so they're really aimed at the more professional market here. Back to the list though, at number 7 we have the Thorn Soundlabs Black Swamp Fuzz Pedal. Thorn actually were announced as a newcomer brand at NAMM, and they've started with an incredibly strong lineup. Pretty much every single pedal they have to offer at this current stage has a parameter that you won't see on many other pedals, if any. The Black Swamp Fuzz, for instance, has a mid-frequency control as well as a mid-control. This means that it's incredibly versatile. You can cut and boost exactly where you need to. I'll also give a couple of other mentions to some more Thorn pedals that I think are particularly interesting, the ones that didn't quite make it to the number 7 spot in this list. First one is going to be the Magma Metal Distortion. This is a heavy metal distortion preamp overdrive gain pedal sort of thing, and it's got the same mid-frequency and mid-control that you see on the Black Swamp, so that's going to be incredibly versatile. There's also the Bad Cash Overdrive, which, if I'm just going by the colour, I'm going to say this is Tube Screamer based, but it has a full 3-band EQ with bass, middle and treble, as well as a presence control, which I don't think I've seen on an overdrive before. I'm very keen to hear what that sounds like. Overall, this is an incredibly strong start from Thorn Soundlabs, and I'm really excited to see these hit full production. On to number 6 now, and this is sort of 2 releases in one. This is going to be Aristides' offset model. As Aristides are a custom company, this one was built by Mike Stringer just to sort of announce the model and show what it can do. This is their multi-scale design with the multi-scale Evertune bridge. Now, they are one of 2 companies that I know of at the minute that are doing these, so this is very special. The second sort of sub-release I'd like to mention here is that it also features Mike Stringer's new bare knuckle pickup set, the Halcyons. This seems to follow the sort of same design as Josh Smith's Impulse set, which has 2 rails per coil. Josh Smith's set were completely designed for low tuning, so I can imagine they use that as sort of the basis for this model. ESP Ltd came out absolutely swinging this year, and at number 5 I have their XJ1 Baritone. This was another brand where I was struggling to pick which model to put front and center for this list. I absolutely love the new Alex Wade signature too, the AW7, which is a 7-string with hybrid hardware Evertune, just my absolute favourite type. Last year they released the XJ1 in a solid black finish, but I'm loving it in the silver burst. The new one is also a baritone, while last year's model was 25.5-inch scale. The specs are about what you'd expect to see for a guitar in this price point. It's currently £1,600 here in the UK. It's got a hipshot bridge, it's got a Fishman pickup, and it's got stainless steel frets. You know, all of the modern metal staples, although it does have regular own brand locking tuners rather than hipshot tuners, which is something of a letdown. For some reason, I haven't seen anyone talking about the brand new high watt models announced at NAMM. So for my number 4 spot, I've picked the Super High 50 and the Super High 33, as they're basically the same thing, just in different wattages. High Watt are also releasing a Pedalsmith, a 2x12 combo, as well as a bunch of bass gear. I couldn't find any official pictures of these new models anywhere yet, so I think they're still in production phases at the minute, which may be why there hasn't been that much buzz about them, but in the Andertons video they looked fantastic. The Super Highs are designed by Mike Fortin, so while the original custom hand-wired ones cost about £4,000 each, the 33 is going to be £1,100 and the 50 watt is going to be £1,500. Now this is pretty huge. You wouldn't normally think high watt when you think of modern metal, but this could be a really strong player. My number 3 pick is going to be the Sterling Fluff Signature. I've been asking for this one ever since they announced the full fat Ernie Ball Music Man signature. This has got all the specs I like to see. It's got a roasted maple neck, it's got a hardtail bridge, and it's got one of the coolest finishes the Sterling have to offer. Generally, I'm just super excited to see this one. They also released the Sterling Kaizen and the Sterling Rabia alongside it, both of which also look fantastic. This NAMM was a very strong showing for Sterling overall. Marshall dropped some absolute hammers this year too, and despite the rather hefty price point of £3,000, I think my number 2 spot is going to go to the 1959 MS. This is going to be their modded Plexi. This is something that people have been asking Marshall to make for the absolute longest time, so it's really nice to see this one come to fruition. Seeing them drop this one alongside a JCM 900 20-watt, JCM 900 combo, the JCM 800 modded, and a whole new range of pedals was just so exciting to see. They just nailed it this year. I'll be interested to see what the prices are like once they've settled a bit on these, because obviously most things will launch at MSRP and then slowly drop as the market sort of dictates where they fit. Before we get to the number 1 spot, I want to do a huge honourable mention. This is the new model from Cerberus Guitars, their Apollo. While this didn't come out at NAMM itself, it was announced over the NAMM weekend. The cool thing about this guitar is that it was designed in collaboration with Kai Down. They reached out to me asking if I wanted to help them spec out a run. We went back and forth for a little while on it, and this is where we've ended up. This model is currently available in both 6 strings and 7 strings, as well as 27-inch scale and 30-inch scale, and there are a range of different headstock options you can choose from. You can either have the 3-a-side, 4 and 3, reverse headstock, or standard headstock. This one costs $899.99 regardless of specs. I've personally gone for the 7-string with a 30-inch scale length and the straight headstock. We took some inspiration from a few different places on this one, including Mike Stringer's Jacksons, Misha's Jacksons, and the Squier Vintage Modified Baritone Jazzmaster. As for the specs on this one, it's got stainless steel frets, luminlay side dots, custom voiced P90 pickups, and all the hardware is hipshot. They're shipping in 3 to 5 months, and I don't receive any kind of kickback on the sales or anything, so this is really just for me sharing to you what's going on. If you did want to purchase this one for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description box down below. You can either pay 30% up front and then 70% later, or you can just pay in full now. So finally, in at number 1, the Balaguer Mitch 6 Baritone. This is the signature model of Mitch Stark from Silent Planet. I have not shut up about this one because it's almost got my perfect specs for a Balaguer. It has a 28.5-inch scale length, it's got the Evertune bridge, and it's also got P90 pickups. It's a swamp ash body with a Bacote veneer, it's got a maple set neck, and it's also got stainless steel frets. The only minor things I would have changed is that I would have picked their growler shape over the Espada, and I would have had the truss rod adjustment at the heel rather than at the headstock. Now Balaguer also announced their version of the multi-scale Evertune bridge at NAMM, and they gave proper credit to Aristides for coming up with it in the first place. It was really nice to see it as a sort of collaborative effort of loads of brands coming together and just being good about this sort of thing rather than being competitive. In the end, for the consumers, that's always a massive win. So that's a wrap up of my top 10 things that I saw come out from NAMM this year. Let me know which NAMM releases were your favourite. Did any of mine show up in your top 10, and were there any major ones that I missed out? Thank you so much for checking out the video, thank you for sticking around to the end, I do really appreciate it. If you could subscribe, that'd be awesome too. That's all for this one though, so until next time, I've been Kai.